Need a mouse. I assume it's recording. Okay, we are recording. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Rachel Rawl. I am with Three Rivers Legal Services. We have 3 offices in the North Florida area. We have one in Gainesville, one in Jacksonville, where I work, and we have one in Lake City. Tonight, we are going to briefly present some information with regard to property taxes. I'm going to touch on reverse mortgages and keeping your home, keeping the value of the home, and pros and cons of selling the home. And especially today, there's a lot of questions whether I should sell my home or not. So we're going to talk about these. Throughout this presentation, we're going to try to do about an hour. I'm going to break at certain periods of time because we have some giveaways. So everybody's got a ticket. We're going to draw for one of the baskets. Okay. I would like to hold all questions to the end because we are recording this, and sometimes people ask questions that don't need to be publicized. However, I will ask that you don't ask any specific questions. I am an attorney in the Jacksonville office. When people start asking me questions, there's a possibility of the attorney-client privilege, and we don't want your dirty laundry out there, especially since we're recording that. So our first topic, and a lot of the topics, is going to be dealing with property taxes. So I have asked Lolly Gomez Roberts from the property appraiser's office to come and help me with these questions. We're going to do a Q&A. So Lolly, come on up. Okay. Good evening. This is Lolly. So, okay, we're going to go through just step by step having property and then the taxes on. So, first question is, when are property taxes due?
Well, your property taxes, the tax collector issues out tax bills every year in the month of November, and usually it comes with a certain discount depending on which month you pay them, of course. So you have month, of course, when they first issue: November, December, January, February, March, and April. April will be due. That's your last month for you to pay your taxes on the property.
And the earlier you pay it, you get discounts?
Yes, the earlier you pay, you get a significant 4% discount initially at the beginning of November. Going forward, it reduces every single month after that.
Okay. And who is responsible for paying the taxes?
The person responsible for paying those taxes, ultimately, it is the property owner or any heir of the property owner who ultimately will inherit this property.
Okay. If they have a mortgage, does the mortgage company pay those?
The mortgage company does pay them if you have an escrow account with them, but ultimately you are responsible to pay this taxes back because then you will have what they call deficiency in your escrow account.
Okay, so if you find out, how can they check to see if their taxes are being paid by the mortgage company?
Well, that is public information. They actually can check the tax collector's webpage. It's an easy source. They can actually go in, they can put in their property address, name, or parcel ID, and they can look at the history of payment, and they can look and see every single year and see if they have been paid or they have not. And if they have paid, they can check and see who's been paying there's a tax certificate or anything like that on the property.
Okay. And so that's the next question. Well, the next one is, how do they pay their taxes? How do they go about actually paying them?
Payment of taxes can be done through the tax collector's webpage. They do have several ways that they can do them. I believe they have the ability to make it through a check, directly through the routing of the banking, and of course they can go in person and make their payment if they don't want to do this online. But depending on whether they do it online, maybe there's a fee that the tax collector charges. My suggestion is they can go ahead and do it online. They can do it on paper or they can do it in person.
Okay. And then my next question is, what happens if the taxes are not paid?
If the taxes are unpaid, what happens is every year as April 1st approaches, once that April 1st deadline passes, taxes do become delinquent. That's what the tax collector goes ahead and proposes. The taxes will become delinquent and there will be a tax certificate put up for sale for the property.
Okay, so explain what a tax certificate is.
Just like in a nutshell, like I said, what happens is when the taxes aren't paid, the tax collector does have to recuperate the money that it's owed for that particular property for that year. And they go ahead and they put the property up for sale. The certificate of title, sorry, for the property is put up for sale pretty much, and somebody can go ahead and bid on it, and they can go ahead and acquire the tax certificate that particular year. Now, payments from the property owner do take priority, so they can contact the tax collector, find a way of paying that certificate back.
Okay, so once that certificate, again, how do they find out if the certificate has been issued?
The certificate number does come out on the search on the public webpage if they go ahead and go to the tax collector's page.
Okay, and how are
And-
those tax certificates sold?
They are put it through a bid. They're putting in through kind of like their, every year, the tax collector goes out and puts out the listing of the bidding on those tax certificates.
Is that published on?
It is published.
Okay,
Yes.
is it in the newspaper, on the website?
It's published actually through the clerk of courts.
Okay, all right. And when are those tax certificates issued? What time of year are those issued?
Last time I verified, and you can correct me if this is wrong, it was in the month of June.
Okay.
That's when they were issued.
So between the end of April and June, can a homeowner go in and pay their taxes?
Yes, the homeowner can pay their taxes at any point, even if after the issue has happened on that certificate and somebody has purchased that certificate, the property owner can go in at any time and pay the certification and any additional fees that were added attached to it.
And my next question is, what kind of fees are attached to that when they're late?
Some of this, it, like I said, it's probably not my area of expertise, but they do have publication fees that are attached to it. And there's an interest that is attached to it from the bidder, which is whoever purchased it. And of course, the taxes at its maximum without any discount. So all the way to the month of April.
Okay, all right. And then how soon after the tax certificate is issued can it be redeemed?
Well, what happens is this, after two consecutive, you don't want it to get to up to consecutive years. So you want to make sure you redeem it before then. You want to make sure you pay back that to the county what you owe on the property.
So if they find that they have tax certificates, is there any way they can make a payment plan for those tax certificates to buy them back?
They can contact the tax collector's office and make any payments on those certificates. What happens is they're already delinquent taxes at that point. And they will have to contact them to try to make any payment arrangement for that.
Okay. So what happens if the tax certificates aren't redeemed?
If the tax certificates are redeemed within the second year of purchase of a tax certificate by the same bidder, they can go ahead and put a claim to request the transaction of deed passed on to the property to whoever paid those taxes.
Okay, and how does that work, getting a tax deed?
I
Okay.
was gonna say, 2 years, it doesn't transfer when a certificate is sold. It transfers when a tax deed is applied
Mhm.
and obtained. And I think they make every effort to still allow the owner
Yes.
to redeem now the amount has gotten pretty high
Sure.
probably.
Yeah, but the tax
Compared to
collector,
1 year's of tax.
yeah, but the tax collector does make every effort possible to give the property owner the priority over any other payment that has been made on that parcel.
Okay, so are those tax deeds are certificates put up for bid for the tax deed? Or is it just the person who bought the tax certificate just automatically, if they apply for that tax deed, then they can?
They can go ahead and request a tax deed on the parcel, but it has to be the same person who originally purchased them.
Okay.
For consecutive years.
Oh, okay. So if you have 3 years and they're different people.
It will
then-
not apply in that sense.
Okay. Do you know if that happens often where different people, different investors, I guess it's investors who are
Well,
purchasing?
investors do purchase it, but it is very it's not their procedure to go ahead and try to outbid somebody who already paid them.
Okay,
That's pretty much it. Usually you will see the same person trying to purchase those taxes consecutively to ultimately go ahead and acquire that property.
okay, all right. And then after a tax deed is issued, is there any way for the homeowner to salvage the house or get the house back before with that tax deed?
At that point, it's very difficult, to be honest with you. They will have to go ahead and it does become a civil matter at that point because it is already a third party that is involved and holds some sort of equity on that property through the payment of taxes.
So then the person who has that tax deed is now the owner and they can kick the a previous homeowner out of the home.
They can request the property to be vacated.
If they could- Okay, all righty. That's all we have for now as far as the taxes. Let's talk about a little bit of the homestead tax exemption.
Yes,
Now, that's different than the homestead tax.
there is two types of homesteads.
Right,
Yes,
right.
there is the homestead tax exemption, which is a tax benefit to property owners that reside on the home and they make it their permanent residence, or the permanent residence of the for them. Now, there is a homestead exemption that comes and it's for creditors. It's for the purpose of
Right.
creditors under the primary home. That's person has.
And that deals with probate.
That deals with
But
probate.
we're
correct.
talking about the taxes you have to pay
Yes,
or the deductions you get.
correct.
Can you explain how that works as far as those tax deductions for the homestead?
So like I mentioned at the beginning, the homestead tax exemption itself, it is a tax break to an owner of a property who makes it their permanent residence or the permanent residence of somebody who's legally or naturally dependent upon them. Okay, the procedure for that is you purchase a home, you come into the property appraiser's office, you can utilize your webpage, you can print out the application, and you make a request for our office to go ahead and apply a homestead tax exemption because you're gonna declare your permanent residence as of January 1st of the first year you're owner.
Okay. Are there different types of homestead exemptions? For instance, are there like for disabled or widows or veterans?
Homestead tax exemption, the homestead exemption is on itself, it's one type of exemption.
Okay.
Now, there is other tax deductions, other tax exemptions out there. Like you mentioned, we do have senior citizens exemptions that are for low income seniors. We have widows exemptions, we have disability exemptions. We have civilian and veteran disability exemptions. We have some active military, which is our deployment exemption. So throughout the years, there has been an array of exemptions that have been put out there for the public to take advantage of because we want them to make sure that they stay in their home.
And how do they find out if they qualify for these exemptions?
Okay, so the simple answer is in the back of the DR 501 form, which is the original application for homestead exemption and tax related exemptions. On the third page, it gives you all the exemptions and all the requirements. Now, my suggestion I always say is the property appraiser's webpage has done a great and hard work to try to go ahead and do kind of like a frequently asked questions, and they have all the questions and they have a bunch of answers. But if that's not sufficient, they can always contact their office to try to get an answer on how to qualify, what are their requirements, when do they have to apply, and when do they have to submit those applications to us.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. It wasn't in this, but it's something that I deal with all the time because I do the probate work.
Okay.
And oftentimes we have multiple people who are taking ownership of the house through probate because they are the heirs. However, only one of them may live in there. Can that whole house get exempted, get the tax exemption, the homestead exemption, or is it just the person who's living in the home?
So the question, I want to break it out in two parts.
Okay,
Because we're going to deal with the application process and one of the requirements, which is ownership. So the first part is the application process. What I tell everyone is when your loved one has passed away, come into the office and submit an application, whether you have ownership, legal ownership of that property at that moment or not, because you have what we call probably a future interest once probate finalizes. So you put into your application with our offices. So as long as we have an application and the application is in good standing, meaning the only other item pending on the application is ownership. As soon as ownership gets cleared up through probate, we can go ahead and grant that exemption.
okay.
Now, here comes the second part. How much do they actually will qualify based off how many owners there's in place? So once probate finalizes, let's say we have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. If the owner decides that they have a joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, if the judge decides that, then the exemption is granted at 100%. Okay. Now, which goes to the fact that it depends on the type of tenancy they hold. Okay. If for some reason one of them gets a life estate, that will be the only person that will be entitled to receive the exception. If we have 5 brothers and only one of them holds residency, that one person is the one that needs to file. And depending on the tenancy they hold, he might only be entitled to receive a 25% or a 20% or 33%, depending on how much ownership he has.
Okay, that's great to know. I get that question all the time. I'm like, go ask the property appraiser. We can talk about that. So when you answered when the homeowner should apply, in general, even outside of probate, when you acquire the house, you should go and apply for that homestead exemption with the property appraiser. Okay, how is the homestead tax exemption lost?
Okay, so what happens is this, just so we can cover the first part. Application happens with our office, and it should happen with our office on or before March 1st. That's the time of the application, okay? Once you file with our office and you qualify, your exemption renews automatically every year. Following that is if by any point the character for which that exemption originally was granted changes in every form, shape, then that exemption might come off. So for example, if the original applicant moved away, if the original applicant married and now it's no longer the primary home, there's a marital home. If the original applicant changed driver's license, motor vehicle, and they have no proof of permanent residence in that home, or of course, in the case when the original applicant has passed away, we go ahead and take that exemption off. But it's not just the homestead exemption itself. Remember, the homestead exemption comes starting with what we call zero homestead. So any changes on that portion of the property or the whole property that is benefiting from homestead exemption, if we have to take that exemption off, it reassesses the property as a whole, meaning whatever fungibility that you had of that exemption in there. So if you had any tax savings additional because you had a stable homestead, that's going to be removed and your property is going to be reassessed.
And then you'll end up paying the full amount.
You end up paying your taxes based off market value at that point.
Okay. The other question, I don't know if you can answer this, is a lot of times people come to us after their loved ones have died, and it's been sometimes many years. The house gets reassessed back to the date of death.
Correct.
And then taxes and penalties add up to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, if the property owner has passed away and an heir has failed to notify the property appraiser's office that the original applicant is no longer alive, and that exemption has stayed on the home, unfortunately, when we do realize this, when it is notified to us, it is our due diligence that we have to go ahead and recuperate the excess taxes that were not paid to the county. Our office does a very hard job to try to identify them, but the problem is that a lot of times they die out of state.
Sure.
And it becomes a bit of a difficulty to try to identify this. And ultimately, that's why we try to let everybody know it is the responsibility of whoever inherits this home to let us know, hey, that exemption is no longer valid. It's my time to apply. Even though I probably don't have ownership, let me apply, and whenever I get this result, give me my exemption.
Okay, so take you back to when the heirs are applying. If they apply right after someone dies, their loved one dies, does the property appraiser then go back and say, hey, we had your application back here, even if it took 2 years? Do they then move forward with that? That exemption?
So Rachel, what happens at that point is, for example, when they come in and file, let's say my mother passes away, and I come in and I know I'm going to inherit her property, I come in and I file. If she was alive January 1st of the year I came in, that exemption is going to stay in place for the whole year, because on January 1st, she was still alive. This was her permanent residence. That pretty much gives me probably a whole year for me to figure out what's going to happen to the ownership of that home. I apply for my exemption. I know I am not going to be granted because I lack ownership, and there's other heirs on the property of my mother. So I go to probate. Probate takes 2 more years. Guess what happens? I submitted already an application. By law, there's a cushion between a 4-year period, which allows the property appraiser's office, as long as there's an application in place, in good standing, the only thing pending is ownership, for them to go back and grant me my exemption retroactively and refund me the taxes that I paid in excess for those years.
Okay, so people shouldn't be afraid to go and apply immediately, because they're going to be able to cover that back instead of like, oh my gosh, they're going to know they died.
That's one of the benefits when you probate. When you probate, what happens is this: when you do that probate, once the judge makes that determination, it's kind of like they're able to go back in time and grant you that ownership as of the day of death of your loved one.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Wally, thank you so much. You gave us, I'm sure, a lot of information, but thank you very much. And we thank the property appraiser's office. Okay, so So, do we want to do a drawing right now? Let's do a drawing. We have 3 lovely baskets. Unfortunately, those that are watching this aren't going to be able to participate. Want to pull the ticket? Sure. Read the number. Okay. How about 758?
Who was right after me? Oh, that's me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Chelsea.
Nice.
Okay. Okay, so our next topic, and this is just very brief informational, is on reverse mortgages. People love them and people hate them. People don't know what they are. And sometimes they can be taken advantage of with reverse mortgages. So the reverse mortgage is just that. It's a mortgage that a mortgage company will give you. The easiest way to explain it is they're really buying the equity in your house. Okay, so when you have a mortgage, let's say you have a mortgage, your house is worth, I'm going to do easy math. Your house is worth $100,000 and you have a mortgage balance of $50,000. You have $50,000 in equity. That's the part of the house that you own. That's yours. Okay? If you want a reverse mortgage, a mortgage company will come in and buy that, but you also have to pay off your other mortgage. Let's say you own the whole $100,000 of it. The mortgage company, this reverse mortgage company, will come in and give you a mortgage against that $100,000. You may be able to take a lump sum, which some people want to do that for various reasons. Maybe they've got health reasons and health issues and they don't have money put away, a long-term health insurance policy or something like that. So the mortgage company can give you a lump sum, or they can pay it out to you in certain amounts. Now, reverse mortgages are for seniors. The youngest of a couple has to be no younger than 62 years. And then what the mortgage company does is kind of figure out how long you're going to live to figure out those monthly payments, if you're going to get monthly payments. So you don't owe the mortgage. In a typical mortgage, you have to pay monthly. With a reverse mortgage, you don't pay anything. But at the end, when you die or your younger spouse dies, or the last person dies, the family can go back in and basically buy back that mortgage, depending on how much it is. They can buy either at a 95% of the value of the home or the value of the mortgage, whichever is less. As with all mortgages, you've got interest accruing every month. So you're not paying that, but it's accruing. So as you go up, you've got that mortgage gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't know if your family can buy that back. I have families all the time that I can't get even 95% of the value. Now today, homes are worth a whole lot more. So maybe those reverse mortgages might be good for some people because the value of the home, they'll be able to buy back the mortgage instead of the home. So you have to think very carefully before you do this. If you think you're going to pass this home, your homestead, up onto your heirs, your children, you may not want them to have this burden of this reverse mortgage. It might be better to just have a regular mortgage, or maybe a HELOC or a line of credit mortgage, so that you're paying on those as you go, but it's a whole lot easier to deal with regular conventional mortgages versus this reverse mortgage. There are people that specialize in these reverse mortgages and foreclosing on them and trying to save homes. So my suggestion to everybody is, if it sounds too good to be true, do your research. Give it very serious thought. Now, if you're someone who doesn't have kids, now there's some people that just don't have children. Whether they're single or they're married, and you don't care what happens to your house when you die, then you might have benefits to that. But it's something that you have to really think very carefully, because as with any salesperson, they're going to make it sound really, really good. And it may be really, really good for some people, but not for everybody. So my advice is just be careful with those types of things. So let's talk about the pros and cons of selling your home. Not everybody wants a home. There are people who rent, but there's people who want, when you own a home, you're building wealth. As that mortgage goes down, you're gaining equity. You can do stuff with that equity, such as a home equity line of credit. If you want to fix something in your house, you can go get a line of credit. You can reduce your mortgage, refinance, or you may not have a mortgage. Right now, as you all know, prices in homes are extremely high. And there's a lot of people out there saying, go take out the equity of your home, get a mortgage, get a second mortgage. Well, that's great until the market crashes and you got this wonderful mortgage at a great rate because your house is worth this, and now the house is worth this, then that mortgage doesn't go down. And then if you want to sell, you can't. You end up bringing money to the table. And the whole purpose a lot of times to sell the house is you don't want that mortgage anymore. But you may have to bring money to the table, and if that's why you're trying to get out of the house, that's not going to work so well. So some of the pros of selling a house is to get rid of that mortgage. I don't want to deal with the mortgage anymore. Let me downsize. Great time to buy, or great time to sell, because I can make a lot of money in my house, pay my little mortgage, and move on. Finding a new home. Sometimes we just want something new. We may be upsizing because we're growing our family, or we're downsizing because they're all moving out. And I don't want to take care of a yard anymore. And I don't want to have to dust 5 stories. And I want to get rid of my clutter. It's a good reason to sell. You've been in your home for a long time. How much stuff do you have? It's a point in time you're just like, okay, I'm done. It's all going to the street. We're starting over. We're going to downsize. We're going to move to a different neighborhood, a different town, a different lifestyle. Someone was telling me they knew someone who sold their home and went and lived on a cruise ship for a couple of years. Yeah, well, the question is, okay, what do you do when the cruise is over? And rents are crazy. So cleaning out the stuff, having the extra money if you have equity in the home. Those are pros for selling your home right now. The other hand is finding a new home, because your house is worth a lot. So is that new home. Did you get enough money out of the old home to buy a new home? You may be closer to getting that mortgage now because look, I can sell the house now. The mortgage is little. We get rid of the mortgage. Now I'm going to buy another house that's worth this, and I'm going to start over where I had only 10 years left. Now I got to start again, whether it's a 15 or 20 or 30-year mortgage. So, what do we do? Your tax issues. I get a good sale for my home. I get all this money. There's possibility of capital gains taxes. If you don't reinvest that within a certain period of time, you have to take that money and put it back into a home. or you have to pay for the money, pay taxes on what you kind of like income. The government wants their money. So depending on your tax bracket, you may have to pay that. So you may not want to go on the cruise. Because that's not tax exempt. Okay, and again, the new mortgage. You know, am I going to be able to get a new mortgage? What are the rates going to be? You know, right now rates are down, but they're starting to come up. Do I, you know, again, it's a balancing. It's like a bet. When do I get in there? When do I want to bet? You know, it's a betting game to sell your house and to buy a new one, unless you've already got it set. You know, I'm going to get this one. I'm going to do this one. We're good. Got it set. And hope the market doesn't change in the next 5 or 10 days while you're closing, because that happens too. And then I'm not going to sell because I'm not going to get enough money because the market just crashed yesterday. Okay. So it's really, really important to think about, do we want to stay in our house? Am I really attached to this? How badly is it? Is it? And the other thing with that, selling the house and selling that older house is, yeah, you may be getting a lot of money, but when you come to the table, you have to pay for the new roof. Are there problems? Because you're going to have an inspection. Am I really going to get that much money? I hear mortgage companies all the time now. Oh yeah, we can get you great rates. We can get you in and out. You don't even have to show the house. Just pack your bags, move out. We'll get you the best money. Okay, but I really needed to do the roof, and I really needed to pull up the carpets, and it needed painting. So when those people who bought virtually come in, they're like, oh, wait a minute. That house doesn't pass inspection. And some of these things may have to be done because they're safety hazards, and that reduces your money down. They don't tell you those things in the end. So we really, really have to think about those types of things. Okay, so how do we protect the value of our home? Well, the first thing is that maintenance. We have to make sure the roof is well. We have to make sure the pipes are good. Your foundation, you know, when we get older houses, they shift. Newer houses shift. Never been in a new house, there was more creaking going on in a new house, and some like walls and cracks and things like that. So we have to maintain our home. That's how you keep the property value. You've got to mow the lawn. You can't let the weeds grow up. You can't have so many cars. You have to look at what your ordinances are in your cities. It's what you can and can't do for your house. You may buy a fixer-upper, but can I fix it up? So the best way to increase your value is to make sure you keep it in good shape. You've got to pay those taxes. If you don't pay those taxes, as Lolly was telling you, there's, you know, some newer home buyers don't understand taxes. You've got to pay them. It's not I'll get to it later. And like the IRS, every year it comes around, you got to pay those taxes. If you have a mortgage, a lot of times the mortgage company will collect that money from you during the year, and that's called escrow. So they will make sure that those taxes are paid because it protects their mortgage. It protects the ownership. And that's the same with insurance. You want to make sure you have a lot of insurance. That's not somewhere you want to skim, especially here in Florida when we have hurricanes. You've got to watch. One of the things when you're buying a house, pay attention to the weather when you're buying a house. You don't want to buy it right before a hurricane. You can't get insurance if there are hurricane warnings or watches within a certain several days. So if you're, let's say you bought a house in May and you're all ready to get going, you're gonna get your insurance, but there's a tropical storm warning. The insurance company is not going to issue that policy. I forgot if it's 5 or 10 days before a hurricane or before a storm, but if there's warnings up in certain areas, I don't recall if it was a warning or a tropical storm, and it depends on the insurance, but the insurance companies will not issue those policies within a certain period of time of storms. There's a good chance they're going to lose money because the house could be destroyed. So they're not going to do that. One of the things I'm not from Gainesville, so I don't know the water tables, but flood insurance. People don't understand the difference between flood insurance and your regular homeowner's insurance. Flood insurance covers water rising. Your regular homeowner's insurance does not. So if you have rising water, and there's a lot of places that aren't in what they call floodplains. So it's like, oh, you don't need flood insurance. Well, like where my home is, we're the highest point in the neighborhood, but so is an anthill in Florida. And so, you know, oh, you don't need flood insurance, but you know what? We had one of those hurricanes come through in parts in downtown Jacksonville that had not flooded in years. I mean, years, not through even Dora, flooded up to 4 and 5 feet high. So that's not covered by regular insurance. Regular insurance will cover things coming down. Flood insurance covers it coming up. So if you see a lot of puddles, and that's why when you go buy a home or in the rain, see where it's flooding. See what the drainage is like. Because your insurance company are like, oh, you didn't need flood insurance. Well, if you have one of those driveways that kind of sloshes down and floods, you get one of those heavy storms or hurricane comes by and you're flooded. So those are all important things to think about when you are buying a home, when you have a home. Insurance is not somewhere to skim. They're going to be your best friend. You know, right now, Florida's got this issue with the repairs for the roofs. Some of the insurance companies are, from what I hear, are canceling if you don't go fix your roof. You don't replace your roof. That takes me to my last subject is scams. You know, we hear them a lot when we do have a storm. People come in, they're going to fix your roof, they're going to fix your property, they're in and out and they're gone. They want money up front. Don't ever pay anything up front. Because especially after storms, we get those fly-by-night people who just, you know, they're going to take your money and you're gone. You're not going to get your work. You can't chase after them because you don't know where they are. So you can't sue them to get your money back. And there goes your $5,000 to fix the hole in the roof. So you have to be very careful about that. And I sort of touched on, even with these mortgage companies, there's a lot of mortgage companies out there. You just have to listen to the radio. I know in Jacksonville, we're bombarded all the time. You know, interest rates are down. We can get you this. They said you can buy a house virtually now. I'm a little leery of things that are virtual because I don't know what they look like. You know, a room, I can make it on a camera, a room look this big when it's really, you know, a third of the size. So the state's always warning us about scams. So those are things that you want to watch out because there goes your money and you don't have the money to fix things that you need to do. So I'm about at the end of what I have to talk about. We can do another drawing. Why don't you check out the 756.
756.
That's you. Oh. You were supposed to get for your ticket.
Okay, so we do have the property appraiser with us today. Do you have anything to add?
No, you did a great job. I don't have anything to add. My name is Aisha Solomon. I'm the Alaska County Property Appraiser's Office. We do the probate and estate planning with Attorney Rawls, and it's just a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for coming and thank you for letting your staff come in and Lolly help us with these questions. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the recording and then we will add, if you have questions, you can ask. I do ask that you don't ask specific personal family questions. As I said, I am an attorney. And when you ask questions, one, I don't know the whole story. There's always maybe. The biggest word we've always taught in law school is it depends. So I thank everybody that is watching this, and our contact information will be available, that if you have any questions, you can give us a call. All right. Here. Too many screens coming up.